I want you to just imagine something for me for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
Like, picture yourself holding on to a deeply, profoundly optimistic worldview. You believe in progress.
Right. The idea that things always get better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You believe in unity. You believe that ultimately the universe bends toward a sort of collective harmony.
A very utopian mindset.
Yeah, and if everyone just communicates and, trades and works together, then poverty, war, suffering, all of that can just be engineered out of existence.
It's a beautiful thought, honestly.
It is. You have this bright, progressive philosophy that guides every single thing you do. It's the core of your identity.
Right.
But now, I want you to imagine taking that beautiful, fragile optimism, packing it into a starship, and getting dropped into an environment that actively, violently, and just relentlessly tries to butcher it.
Oh, wow.
Every single day.
I mean, that is basically the ultimate sociological stress test, isn't it?
Totally.
You're taking a utopian hypothesis and slamming it into a meat grinder to see what comes out the other side.
And that is exactly what we are getting into. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are looking at a fascinating and honestly, kind of a terrifying case study in survival.
It really is an incredible piece of lore.
Yeah, we've got a stack of source material here detailing the lore of a place called Lshan. Specifically, it's known as the Grim Bastion of the Produce Rift.
Which is a title that really sets a mood right off the bat.
Right. Our mission today is to deconstruct how an idealistic faction, specifically the Tao Empire in this universe, how they adapt when they are forced to live on the absolute most dangerous frontier imaginable.
And adapt is putting it mildly.
Seriously. We are going to look at their geography, their history, their technology, and really the psychology of a people who have been pushed right to the absolute breaking point.
It's a lot to cover.
It is.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because this isn't just a story about aliens and spaceships, It's a study of what happens to hope when it meets relentless cosmic hostility.
What's fascinating here is the stark contrast presented right at the foundation of our source material.
Yeah, lay that out for us.
So the Tao Empire, as a macro civilization, is traditionally characterized as the optimistic, progressive core of their galactic sphere.
Like they're the good guys, relatively speaking.
Relatively, yes. They are driven by a binding philosophy called the greater good.
Which is what exactly? Like utilitarianism.
Basically, yeah. It's an aggressive form of utilitarianism. It dictates that every individual must strive to maximize the collective benefit of society.
Everyone works together, everyone prospers.
Exactly. But Lshan is the glaring paranoid exception to that rule.
They are not holding hands and singing songs.
Not at all. The records explicitly tell us they are not that optimistic core. They are battle-hardened, traumatized survivors.
Right.
And it tees up the central thesis that we'll be exploring today, which is that in the 41st millennium, survival requires assuming the absolute worst of everyone.
Up to and including the universe itself.
Precisely.
So to understand who these survivors are and, why they act the way they do, we really first have to look at where they are.
Geography is everything here.
Because in this case, geography is absolutely destiny. We cannot separate the culture of Lshan from the physical coordinates of their planetary system.
No, you really can't. Geography dictates their entire reality.
Right.
The Te, as a species, rely heavily on structured logistics, supply chains, centralized command.
They like order.
They demand order. So when you alter the geography to something chaotic, you sever those lifelines.
Okay, so looking at the foundational facts from our sources, this settlement, Lshan, was established during something called the second sphere of expansion.
Right, which sounds very grand.
It does. Now, just the phrase sphere of expansion gives you a sense of their baseline mindset. It implies a steady, organized, almost geometric spreading of civilization.
That's confident.
Yeah, exactly. It's confident. They push outward, they establish colonies, they integrate new worlds. It's methodical.
Until they hit the rift.
Right. But they set up shop perilously close to something called the Produce Rift. And the records describe this rift as a region of space simply teeming with dangers.
I want to pause on that concept of the Produce Rift, actually.
Yeah, please do, because it sounds intense.
Because teeming with dangers doesn't quite capture the physical reality of a spatial anomaly in this setting.
It's not just like a bad neighborhood.
No, a rift in this context isn't just a cluster of bad asteroids or rough weather. It is a tear in the fabric of real space.
Wow.
It's bleeding into the warp, which is an alternate dimension of chaotic energy.
So the physics are literally broken there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It means the physical laws of physics are fraying at the edges of their solar system.
That is terrifying.
It means unpredictable storms that can swallow ships whole. And worse, it serves as a spawning ground or a hiding place for some of the most predatory entities in the galaxy.
So it fundamentally alters the environment. I was thinking about how to visualize this for you, the listener.
It's tough to picture.
It is, and it's kind of like trying to build a utopian glass-walled eco-commune in the middle of an active volcano.
That's a great image.
Right. But an active volcano that also happens to shoo out angry bears.
Yes. That is incredibly accurate to the lore.
You can't just plant a community garden when it's raining bears.
You really can't.
Another way I thought about it is like deep-sea gigantism.
Oh, like in the ocean.
Yeah. When an organism evolves at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the crushing pressure and complete absence of light dictate its entire biology.
Right. It adapts or it dies.
Exactly. It develops thick, jagged armor, bioluminescent lures, and, no eyes. Lshan is sociologically operating at the bottom of a cosmic Mariana Trench.
The pressure changes them.
Right. The pressure of the Perduce Rift hasn't just made them angry. It has fundamentally altered their evolutionary survival traits.
It has to.
The environment is so heavy, so isolating, that the standard Tao toolkit of diplomacy and technological trade just crumbles.
The Mariana Trench is the perfect framework for this, really.
You think so?
Absolutely. Because if you put a shallow water reef fish into the Mariana Trench, it just implodes.
Boom. Done.
The Lshan colonists were those reef fish. They were built for a society of structured caste systems.
Right. The earth caste, fire caste, all of that.
Yes. The earth caste builds, the fire caste fights, the water caste negotiates, and the air caste fly.
All working together.
All under the serene guidance of their ethereal leaders. But when you are perched on the edge of a localized terror in reality, the water caste can't negotiate with a warp storm.
You can't talk a black hole out of eating you.
Exactly. And the supply lines from the core empire are constantly disrupted by gravitational tides and psychic turbulence.
So they are totally cut off.
They are isolated, and isolation breeds a very specific kind of cultural mutation.
Which makes sense. The records state that this location is the root of their defining trait.
The hostility.
Yeah. They have suffered so much at the hands of alien races pouring out of that rift that they are now solemn, taciturn, unfriendly, and openly hostile to outsiders.
Which is so un-Tao.
Right. This is a massive departure from the rest of their species, who, as a rule, actively try to recruit other alien races into their empire.
It represents the death of curiosity.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Because curiosity requires a baseline level of safety.
Right.
If you are exploring a new forest and you know there are deer and birds, you walk with your head up.
You're taking pictures, you're relaxed.
Exactly. But if you know that every single rustle in the bushes is a predator that wants to lay eggs in your chest cavity.
Yikes. Yeah, you stop looking at the trees.
You stop looking at the trees and you keep your weapon drawn. The Tay are naturally a curious species. They want to understand the universe to better organize it.
But not Lshan.
Lshan has learned that understanding the universe is a luxury they simply cannot afford.
They don't want to meet new people. New people mean death.
I want you to reflect on how that plays out over generations, though. Think about how your own environment shapes your worldview.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you live in a place where people generally follow the rules, where the environment is safe and predictable, your default setting is likely trust.
You leave your doors unlocked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You assume people mean well, or at least that they are rational actors.
Right.
But prolonged exposure to a high-stress, hostile environment, where the primary output of your neighboring geography is unprovoked violence that physically and mentally changes a culture's default setting.
It rewires their brains.
The neurological toll of hypervigilance gets passed down. They transition from a baseline of trust to a baseline of intense, paranoid mistrust.
Wow.
As it's famously phrased, they have looked into the abyss and the abyss has stared back.
It's an inherited trauma, really, baked right into their societal DNA. They didn't start out hostile. The universe systematically beat the optimism out of them.
It really did.
Their geography explains the underlying paranoia, sure. But as we move into their recorded history, we see that this paranoia isn't just some vague, irrational fear of the dark.
No, it is highly rational.
It is 100% justified by the specific, documented events they've lived through.
If the Perduce Rift is the pressure cooker, their historical record is the list of things that were thrown into the pot with them.
It is essentially a litany of cascading disasters.
A catalog of nightmare.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Let's look at the first major historical traumas the archives detail here.
Okay, where are we starting?
In the year 876 of the 39th millennium, Lshan is hit by a devastating raid.
Right.
The attackers are identified in the source text as Cruel Eldar, which points us directly toward the faction known as the Dark Eldar, or Drukhari.
Yes, the Drukhari.
Now, I want to make sure we understand the mechanics of this threat.
Yeah.
Because a Dark Eldar raid is not a military conquest.
No, it's not about territory.
Right, they aren't trying to plant a flag, take over the planetary government, and start collecting taxes.
No, the Drukharis do not hold territory outside of their own dimensional webway.
They live in a totally different dimension.
Exactly. Their entire civilization functions on an economy of suffering.
Which is so messed up.
We need to be clear about the biological and metaphysical mechanics driving this enemy. The Dark Eldar suffer from a slow spiritual decay.
Like a disease.
More like their souls are constantly being drained away by a dark deity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The only way they can stave off this spiritual death is by feeding on the extreme anguish and pain of other sentient beings.
So the cruelty isn't just a byproduct of war, it is the primary objective.
Exactly. The violence is existential for them.
So they need victims just to survive.
Yes. When they hit Lshan, they didn't bomb military installations to cripple infrastructure.
They went for the cities.
They targeted population centers to maximize terror, extract millions of captives, and drag them back into their labyrinthine dimension.
Just to torture them.
To be tortured for centuries, solely to feed their own spiritual starvation.
That is just bleak.
For an idealistic society that believes in the rational, collective, greater good, encountering a highly advanced species whose sole biological imperative is the infliction of agony is a massive cognitive shock.
I can't even imagine. And this is where I really had to stop and reread the source material.
The retaliation.
Yes. Because the Tau's response to this raid completely caught me off guard.
It's quite out of character.
After suffering this traumatic violation, Lshan forces mobilize, and they completely destroy a planet called the Maiden World of Lalarsis.
A total annihilation.
Now, I need to stop here because this doesn't track for me.
Yeah.
Well, the Taus are supposed to be the progressive, diplomatic ones. Decimating an entire planet in retaliation for a raid seems like a massive, terrifying overreaction, doesn't it?
It does seem that way, yes.
Furthermore, based on what I understand about Maiden Worlds from the lore, those are pristine, ecologically perfect planets inhabited by a completely different subfaction of Eldar, right?
Correct. The Exodites.
Right. The Exodites, who are basically Amish space cells riding dinosaurs.
That's a funny but fairly accurate way to describe them.
Why wipe out a primitive, peaceful planet to avenge a raid by the Torture Elves?
That is the exact paradox we need to dissect here because it highlights the fundamental fracturing of their ideology.
So how do they justify it?
Well, you are correct in your assessment. The Maiden Worlds were seeded millions of years ago by the ancient Eldar Empire.
Okay.
They are ecologically flawless, and they are inhabited by Exodites who explicitly rejected the decadent, cruel path of the Dark Eldar.
So they had nothing to do with it.
By any objective measure of intelligence or diplomacy, the Exodites of Lalarsis had absolutely nothing to do with the raid on Lshan.
So it's a war crime.
By our standards, absolutely.
It's collective punishment on a planetary scale against innocent bystanders who just happen to share a genetic lineage with the attackers. How does a society built on the greater good rationalize that?
They rationalize it through the cold, brutal mathematics of survival.
It just feels so dark for them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific event demonstrates the absolute limits of an ideology when faced with incomprehensible cruelty.
The greater good breaks down.
The greater good implies diplomacy, integration, and mutual benefit. It assumes the universe is rational.
Which it clearly isn't here.
But how do you apply the greater good to an enemy that materializes out of nowhere, butchers your citizens for psychic sustenance, and vanishes without leaving a forwarding address?
You can't. You can't send a watercast diplomat to negotiate a trade deal with someone who wants to turn the diplomat's nervous system into a musical instrument.
Exactly. And that realization is what broke the Lshan approach to foreign policy.
The diplomacy died that day.
They realized that proportionate response and targeted justice were luxuries. They simply didn't have the intelligence network or the geographical reach to execute.
Because they can't chase the Dark Eldar into their weird dimension.
The Dark Eldar retreat into a dimension the Tau cannot access. So Kelshan needed to send a message to an enemy they could not reach, in a language that enemy would understand.
By burning something the Eldar species collectively values.
Yes. The Maiden Worlds are culturally and spiritually sacred to all Eldar, even the Dark Ones, as monuments to their lost empire.
So as a strike at their history.
The destruction of Larsis is not just an angry lash-out. It is a highly calculated, chillingly pragmatic terror tactic.
Wow.
It is Kelshan broadcasting to the universe. We may believe in the greater good, but we no longer care about the nuances of your internal alien politics.
Don't mess with us.
Right. If one of you crosses our borders, we will annihilate the things you hold sacred. It shows that even the most progressive philosophy, when pushed by the abyss, will resort to mutually assured destruction.
It's the exact moment they stopped trying to be the police and started acting like the executioners.
Very well put.
And the sheer scale of the escalation is breathtaking. They didn't just bomb a military base, they unmade an entire biosphere.
They erased a world.
But the real tragedy of the Purtis Rift is that the hits just keep coming.
It never stops.
If the Dark Eldar raid made Kelshan ruthless, the next existential threat they faced made them utterly desperate.
Because things can always get worse.
Because if you thought invisible torture pirates were bad, wait until you meet High Fleet Gorgon.
Ah, yes. The arrival of the Tyranids. This completely shifts the paradigm of warfare for Kelshan yet again.
The language in the source material here takes a very bleak turn.
It's apocalyptic.
It literally refers to this invasion as their most devastating conflict. We get a list of catastrophic losses that read like a casualty report from the end of the world.
Entire systems fell.
The colonies of Shadrag and Kameh are completely destroyed. Kelshan itself is besieged. Entire colony worlds are forced into emergency evacuations.
We are talking about a desperate, brutal war for basic survival against a literal swarm.
Yeah, explain the Tyranids a bit for us. Because they aren't just aliens with ray guns.
We need to unpack the mechanics of a Tyranid hive fleet to understand why this was so devastating.
Right.
The Tyranids are not an empire. They don't have industry, they don't have politics, and they don't have malice.
They're just hungry.
They are a singular intergalactic biological imperative designed to consume all biomatter in the universe, repurpose it into more Tyranids, and move on.
They are galactic locusts.
Locusts on a scale that defies comprehension, yes.
It's mind-boggling.
When a hive fleet approaches a system, it casts a psychic shadow, something called the shadow in the warp, which basically suffocates faster-than-light communication.
So you can't even call for help.
The target system is suddenly cut off from the rest of the galaxy in total silence.
Just left alone in the dark.
Then come the spore chimneys, the atmospheric alterations, the stripping of the oceans, the processing of every microbe, plant, and animal into nutrient slurry.
It's biological strip mining.
Exactly. The tactic that Kelshan used against the Eldar, that punitive retaliation, is mathematically useless against a swarm.
Right. You can't terrorize a bug.
You cannot terrorize a Tyranid. You cannot threaten its sacred worlds because it doesn't have any.
The psychological whiplash must have been insane. Like Kelshan just hardened its heart, abandoned its morals, and destroyed a maiden world to prove it was the toughest kid on the block.
And then a bigger kid shows up.
And the universe responds by sending a predator that doesn't care about toughness, morals, or messages.
Yeah.
It just wants the calorie.
Exactly. Kelshan was forced into a war of pure industrial and biological attrition.
And it was a grind.
Shadrag, which you mentioned, was a grinding meat grinder of a campaign. The Tau would adapt their pulse rifles, and the Tyranids would rapidly evolve thicker armor in response.
Like mid-battle.
Mid-campaign, yes. Forcing the Tau to invent new plasma tech, which the Tyranids would counter with heat-resistant carapaces.
That's exhausting.
It was an arms race on a microscopic biological level.
But right in the middle of this nightmare, and this is my favorite part of the lore, the source material throws in what has to be the wildest, most chaotic twist in the entire lore.
Oh, the Imperial fleet.
Yes. Kelshan is fighting for its life, their colonies are being digested, their capital is under siege, and suddenly an Imperial human fleet emerges from the warp and attacks Kelshan.
It is a moment of profound, almost tragicomic historical irony.
It is absolute chaos. I was reading this and I actually had to laugh at the sheer absurdity of the timing.
It's incredibly bad luck.
I'm trying to picture the Tau commanders. Their planet is literally being eaten. The sky is full of biological spores. The ground is crawling with acid-spitting monsters.
Yeah.
and then a massive Gothic cathedral spaceship drops out of another dimension and starts shooting at them.
Right.
I mean, it's like your house is currently being eaten by a swarm of giant termites.
Okay, I like this analogy.
And suddenly, a bitter ex from 150 years ago kicks down the front door wanting to fight, completely unaware of the termites.
That analogy captures the temporal dissonance perfectly.
It's just so ridiculous. Why are they even there?
We have to look at the mechanics of the warp to understand how this happened.
Okay, break it down.
The Imperium of Man travels through the warp, which, as we discussed, is a dimension of pure psychic energy.
Right, where the physical laws break down.
Yes, and time does not flow linearly in the warp. You can enter it on Tuesday and exit a century earlier, or a millennium later.
So they essentially got caught in a time dilation vortex.
Precisely. The records indicate this Imperial fleet believed they were still fighting the Damocles Crusade.
The Damocles Crusade.
The Damocles Crusade was a massive, bloody border war between the Imperium and the Tau Empire that had concluded a century and a half prior.
Wait, 150 years ago?
Yes. This fleet got lost in the warp, popped out 150 years late, saw Tau planetary defenses, and simply resumed their mission to purge the alien.
Oh my gosh.
Completely oblivious to the fact that the political landscape had moved on, and more importantly, completely oblivious to the apocalyptic swarm currently devouring the system.
The cognitive toll this must take on Lshan Command, I can't even. You're already fighting an unwinnable war of attrition, and now you have a two-front war against heavily armored, zealously xenophobic human crusaders.
It's an impossible situation.
But the text details a resolution here that is, frankly, stunning.
The Alliance.
Yeah. Faced with mutual annihilation, the Tau and the Imperial forces actually agree to a truce.
Which is unheard of.
They pause their war and actually fight side by side to destroy High Fleet Gorgon.
The truce with the Imperium proved Lshan would abandon dogma for physical survival.
It's a huge deal.
This is a monumental shift. The Imperium's foundational religion is built on the extermination of all alien life.
Suffer not the alien to live.
Exactly. And the Tau believe in subjugating or integrating everything into the greater good. Both sides view the other with absolute ideological contempt.
I mean, if the Tau were willing to glass a maiden world over a raid, it feels like their instinct would be to just let the humans and the bugs fight it out, or, I don't know, try to blast the humans out of the sky out of pure spite.
A more dogmatic, rigid society might have tried exactly that.
And died.
And they would have been annihilated, yes. What's fascinating here is what this truce reveals about the specific psychological evolution of Lshan.
That pragmatism again.
We talked about their paranoia and their hostility, but this alliance shows that their hostility is bound by a cold, mathematical pragmatism.
They did the math.
They calculated the threat vectors. Tyranids are an extinction-level event. The Imperium is merely a geopolitical threat.
Pragmatism over dogma. They will shake hands with the devil if it means they don't get eaten by the bugs today.
It is the ultimate expression of utilitarianism, stripped of all its optimistic veneer.
Yeah, there's no greater good speech here.
They didn't ally with the humans because they suddenly saw the value in diversity or diplomacy.
Nope.
They allied with them because human ships have very big guns that are very good at killing Tyranid bioships.
That was good.
It proves that Lshan values immediate physical survival over any long-term ideological purity.
And it worked. They survived the swarm.
They did, barely.
But physical force is useless when the threat isn't something you can shoot.
Right, which brings us to the next disaster.
Because the universe wasn't done throwing nightmares at the Purtus Rift. We've had invisible torture pirates, biological swarm locusts, and time-traveling religious zealots.
A full roster of enemies.
Next, we move to the year 998 of the 41st millennium. That brings us to the Chaos Attack.
The assault by the faction known as the Purge.
Yeah.
This represents a profound escalation in the type of threat Lshan has to manage.
The text notes that the Purge is a Chaos Space Marine warband devoted to Nurgle.
The chaos god of disease.
And their goal wasn't to land troops and plant a flag either. They were attempting to poison the very atmosphere of the planet.
Atmospheric warfare.
Now, I want to unpack the mechanics of Nurgle, because we aren't just talking about a bad strain of the flu being dropped from a bomber, are we?
Not at all. Nurgle is one of the primary chaos deities, the god of disease, decay, and despair.
Despair is the key word there.
Yes. A biological weapon deployed by the Imperium or the Tau is bound by the laws of chemistry and biology. It can be analyzed, quarantined, and cured with enough medical processing power.
You could put it in a petri dish.
Right. But a plague of Nurgle is warp-painted. It is metaphysical rot.
Ew.
It doesn't just attack your white blood cells, it attacks your soul, your will to live, the very structural integrity of reality around you.
That's terrifying.
Metal rusts in seconds, flesh liquefies, and the despair of the victims actually feeds the strength of the pathogen.
It's an atmospheric threat driven by the zealous worship of a disease entity. How do you even begin to fight a metaphysical plague with pulse rifles and railguns?
You cannot. You really can't.
So what do they do?
This is where the extreme intellectual agility of Lshan is truly tested. Most military cultures spend centuries optimizing to fight one specific type of enemy.
Sure.
The Imperium is very good at mass infantry charges. The Standard Tau are very good at long-range mobile gun lines. But Lshan has to rewrite its entire tactical playbook on the fly.
Over and over again.
You cannot fight an Imperial battleship the same way you fight a Tyranid swarm, and you certainly cannot fight a warp-spawn disease the way you fight a conventional army.
The records show that their defense against this was incredibly specific.
Yes, Shoan's strategy.
The attack was foiled by a commander named Shoan, who utilized something called Remora drone stealth fighters.
Which is a masterpiece of tactical problem-solving.
Walk us through it.
Consider the parameters of the threat. The enemy is deploying an atmospheric poison, likely through large dissemination vessels or ground-based venting stations.
Pumping it into the air.
If you send in Firecast pilots in conventional aircraft the moment their cockpit seals fail, or even if the metaphysical nature of the warp plague bypasses physical seals, the pilot rots in their seat and the aircraft crashes.
You lose the pilot and the machine. It's a lose-lose.
So Shoan removes the biological vulnerability entirely.
By using drones.
Remora drones are heavily armed, unmanned, AI-driven stealth fighters. They don't have lungs to inhale the plague. They don't have souls for the warp taint to corrupt. They don't feel despair.
That's brilliant.
By utilizing stealth technology, they bypassed the heavy anti-air defenses of the Chaos Fleet, surgically eliminated the atmospheric processors, and stopped the poisoning of the planet without risking a single Tau life to biological exposure.
It's a completely cold, calculating, and perfect defense.
It really is.
But I want to pause and look at the sheer scale of adaptability required here. Think about what we've covered today.
It's a lot.
Lshan has been attacked by Dark Eldar, requiring punitive terror tactics. Tyranids requiring biological arms races, the Imperium requiring immediate geopolitical truces, and Chaos requiring unmanned, soulless surgical strikes.
The cognitive elasticity required to survive that variety of threats is just staggering.
It's insane.
It's a society that has to exist in a perpetual state of hyper-creative paranoia.
It's like they are constantly playing a game of galactic rock, paper, scissors, but the opponent keeps inventing new, horrifying hand shapes.
That's a fun way to put it, yeah.
And if Lshan throws the wrong shape even once, their entire civilization dies.
Margins for error are zero.
Which brings us perfectly to how they actually managed to sustain this fight. Because you don't survive that kind of pressure by sticking to standard operating procedures.
You have to innovate.
The text reveals that this constant state of siege has transformed Lshan into a massive hub of military innovation.
But it's a very specific kind of innovation.
It is the innovation of desperation.
Exactly.
The source material notes they are known for fielding experimental technology. Now, in a vacuum, experimental technology sounds great.
It sounds progressive.
It sounds like Silicon Valley in space.
Oh.
But in the context of Lshan, we're talking about throwing standard safety protocols, ethical engineering standards, and pilot well-being out the nearest airlock.
We really have to look at the relationship between the Earth caste, the engineers and builders, and the Fire caste, the warriors.
How does that dynamic change under pressure?
Well, in the utopian core of the Tau Empire, engineering is a methodical process. Prototypes are tested for years, sometimes decades, to ensure the safety of the pilot.
Because the greater good values the life of its citizens.
Exactly. Lshan proves that ethics in engineering is a luxury byproduct of safety.
Wow.
When safety vanishes, engineering reverts to pure, lethal mathematics.
The text highlights two specific pieces of technology that illustrate this beautifully.
The battlesuits.
Yeah. The first is the Ravarna battlesuit.
A fascinating piece of machinery. The Ravarna is a heavily modified variant of the standard Riptide battlesuit.
And the lore specifies it was born explicitly out of the need to hold back those Tyranid hordes we talked about earlier during the Gorgon campaign.
Yeah.
They even named it Ravarna as a tribute to a legendary hero of that specific war. So it's a piece of technology born directly from localized trauma.
It is trauma-made metal.
So what makes the Ravarna different from a standard Tau suit?
The standard riptide uses a nova reactor.
Okay, what's that?
It's an experimental, highly potent power source that is notoriously unstable. In the core empire, they use it cautiously, installing limiters and failsafes.
Because they don't want it blowing up.
Right. But the Earth caste of Kelshan looked at the Tyranid swarm and realized that a safe reactor wouldn't generate enough firepower to stop 1 billion bioforms.
Oh, they tweaked it.
They did more than tweak it. They stripped out the failsafes. They bypassed the cooling limiters.
Oh, boy.
They created a suit that fires plasma weapons capable of vaporizing city blocks, but it actively cooks the pilot alive with radiation and heat if pushed too hard.
They built an architectural monument to their own survival. But it's a monument that fundamentally endangers the person sitting inside it.
Exactly.
And the Earth caste is doing this while the walls are shaking. They aren't in pristine laboratories. They're bolting these things together while the sky falls.
It's duct tape and prayers, essentially.
And that leads to the second piece of tech, which I think is even more telling regarding the psychological toll this takes.
The XV9.
The XV9 hazard battlesuit.
The XV9 is perhaps the purest distillation of the Kelshan mindset.
The tech says the fire caste has mastered this close support battlesuit. They use it in aggressive counterattacks to stall enemy advances.
It's designed for the absolute worst fighting.
Right. It's designed to drop right into the thickest, most lethal part of the conflict. But the key phrase in the text is that operating this suit is explicitly recognized as a dangerous duty, and yet it is considered a mark of pride for the solemn and determined fire warriors.
This brings us to a critical inflection point regarding the psychology of the soldier in this environment.
I'm really struggling with this cultural shift, honestly.
How so?
Well, when we look at this, warriors taking immense pride in operating wildly dangerous, hazardous experimental suits that are actively destroying their own neurological pathways or irradiating their bodies just to stall an enemy advance for a few more minutes, is this innovation a sign of hope? Or is this just a symptom of a society that has completely normalized suicidal desperation?
It is entirely the latter, culturally disguised as the former.
Man, that's heavy.
Kelshan has rationalized its trauma. In the core Tao philosophy, the primary military doctrines are the Manka, which is the killing blow, and the Kayan, the patient hunter.
Standard tactics.
Both emphasize tactical mobility, preserving Tao lives, and retreating if the odds are unfavorable.
Live to fight another day.
Exactly. Holding a static line against overwhelming numbers is considered barbaric and foolish in standard Tao doctrine.
But Kelshan doesn't have anywhere to retreat to.
Precisely. The Perduce Rift has cut off their retreat, so the Firecast had to abandon their foundational tactical philosophy.
They just had to stand there and die.
They have to hold the line, and because the cognitive dissonance of sending your own people into a meat grinder goes against everything the greater good teaches, the society had to perform a massive psychological pivot.
They had to make it honorable.
They culturally codified the acceptance of certain death or severe physiological hazard as a mark of pride.
Think about a time in your life when you were under so much pressure at work or in a relationship that you started normalizing incredibly toxic behavior just to get through the week.
We all do it to some extent.
Right. You convince yourself that pulling an all-nighter and being miserable is a badge of honor, a sign of your dedication. Now scale that up to an entire civilization.
The scale is horrifying.
The Firecast warriors are solemn and determined because they know they are the only thing standing between their people and extinction.
True.
They take pride in the XV9 hazard suit, not because they have a death wish, but because taking on the most lethal, self-destructive duty is the ultimate expression of their grim pragmatism.
They have culturally elevated that sacrifice so the society doesn't collapse under the guilt of what they are asking their young people to do.
It is a defense mechanism on a species-wide scale.
They wear their trauma.
Which brings us to the visual manifestation of this culture. Because this grim, fatalistic mindset isn't just hidden in their history books or the engineering blueprints of their reactors.
No, it is on full display.
It is literally painted on the armor they wear into battle. Let's talk about the aesthetic of grim determination.
Form deeply follows function in Kelshan.
The source text gives us their specific color scheme. They are identified by predominantly dark gray armor, with their sept markings, which are like their unit or planetary identifiers, painted in a stark golden yellow.
Contrast that with the standard aesthetic of the Tao Empire. What do we normally see?
Well, when we think of utopian, progressive sci-fi factions, we picture bright, clean colors.
Like Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. Pristine whites, shining silvers, the classic Tau ochre, or a very clean, peaceful blue.
It's meant to look unified, diplomatic, and advanced.
But Lshan goes with dark gray and golden yellow. Okay, let's unpack this. So what does this all mean? To me, it looks like soot and hazard tape.
Soot and hazard tape is perhaps the most analytically accurate way to conceptualize it, actually.
Really?
The text provides the explicit reasoning for this aesthetic. It is a practical choice. It is noted as being highly suitable for shipboard duty and the grim industrial environments of the Produce Rift. What's fascinating here is the logistical and psychological storytelling embedded in that simple choice of paint.
It's a completely devoid of ceremony.
A culture forged in industrial attrition, a culture that spends its Tuesday fighting off boarding actions in the cramped corridors of a starship, and its Thursday holding the line in smog-choked, besieged factory cities that cannot wear bright white armor.
It would get ruined instantly.
The logistics of warfare dictate aesthetics. Bright white gets stained by engine oil, by atmospheric ash, by the blood of the tyrannid swarm.
You have to clean it constantly.
It requires maintenance, cleaning, and a supply chain of ceremonial paint that Lshan simply does not have the time or resources to maintain.
They're literally too busy surviving to worry about keeping their whites bright.
Exactly. Dark gray is the color of the starship bulkheads they defend.
It blends right in.
It is the color of the ash-choked skies of their besieged worlds. It functions as camouflage for a life lived permanently in the industrial trenches of the galaxy.
In the yellow.
The yellow provides stark utilitarian contrast for unit cohesion in low-visibility environments.
It perfectly mirrors their pragmatic soul. They have stripped away all the pomp, all the decorative, diplomatic optimism of the greater good, and left only the cold, hard, industrial reality of survival.
It sends a message.
It signals to their own populace. We are workers, we are defenders, and there's no room for vanity here.
It visually brings all the threads together: the isolating geography of the Produce Rift, the relentless historical trauma of the Eldar and the Swarm, the dangerous experimental tech that cooks its own pilots.
Yeah.
It all coalesces into this soot and hazard tape aesthetic,
It really does.
which builds directly to the final chilling thesis of our source material. The text explicitly refers to a concept called the ultimate horror of Lshan.
And when you first read that phrase, the ultimate horror, in a setting that features literal demons, dimension-hopping torturers, and galaxy-eating biological swarms, you expect a monster.
You expect a big boss fight.
Yeah, but the true horror they're talking about is profoundly philosophical.
It was an internal horror.
The ultimate horror isn't the tyrannid bugs, it isn't the dark Eldar, it isn't the Nurgle demon worshippers poisoning the sky.
No, it's none of those.
The text states that the ultimate horror is their own grim, paranoid pragmatism.
Yes.
It is the terrifying realization that the noble, progressive ideals of the Tau Empire, the very concept of the greater good, can absolutely be corrupted and broken by the sheer brutality of the galaxy.
This raises an important question for you, the listener.
Let's hear it.
It asks us to examine the elasticity and the fragility of ideology. We all like to believe that our principles, our own internal versions of a greater good, whether that's democracy, pacifism, free speech, or human rights, we believe they are unshakable.
We want to believe that, yeah.
We like to believe that if we just hold on to our morals tightly enough, they will act as a shield, that they will somehow protect us from the worst the world has to offer.
But they don't.
But the tragedy of Lshan is the absolute proof that an environment can be so corrosive, so unyieldingly violent, that holding on to idealistic purity is essentially suicide.
The text notes that their only answer to the universe now is to fight harder and trust less. That is so deeply sad.
It is a tragic loss of innocence.
This beautiful philosophy of unity and mutual benefit, the greater good, is no longer a protective, unifying shield for them. They haven't abandoned it, which is almost worse. They've twisted it.
It has been forged into a weapon.
A weapon that must be wielded with cold, merciless determination. That is the exact quote from the text.
It's chilling.
They still believe they serve the greater good, but their definition of good has contracted to the size of their own borders.
To the rest of the Tau Empire, the greater good means join us and we will prosper together.
But to Lshan,
To Lshan, the greater good now simply means Lshan survives and everything else burns if it tries to stop us.
it is the tragedy of survival. It's the realization that totalitarianism and ruthlessness can be perfectly justified by environment.
That's a terrifying thought.
They have successfully kept themselves alive against mathematically impossible odds. They have adapted, they have innovated, they have endured when any lesser civilization would be ash.
But the cost of that physical survival was their ideological soul.
They have become the very thing a utopian society fears. A paranoid, isolated, ruthless military state.
And yet, the horror lies in the fact that we cannot objectively condemn them.
We really can't.
If they had remained pure, if they had tried to negotiate with the Drukhari or the Tyranids, they would simply be dead.
Which is an incredible, heavy concept to wrap our heads around.
Yeah.
Because, scaling this down from sci-fi to reality, we all face environments, maybe not alien swarms, but toxic workplaces, deeply dysfunctional family dynamics, structural inequalities, or extreme poverty.
Real-world produce rifts.
Exactly. We face environments that threaten to harden us or burn us out. When you are constantly under threat, your worldview shrinks. You stop being generous. You stop giving people the benefit of the doubt.
It's a natural defense mechanism.
Lshan represents the extreme sci-fi manifestation of what happens when optimism is completely abandoned, not out of malice, but in the name of near survival. It is the moral injury of just staying alive.
It forces us to ask what parts of our own humanity we compromise when we feel perpetually under siege. At what point does your armor become your cage?
Absolutely. So, to recap this massive, incredible journey, we started with an optimistic, progressive philosophy, a culture aiming for a utopian ideal of galactic harmony.
The baseline Tau.
We watched them expand into the neighborhood from hell, setting up colonies on the lip of the Perdiz Rift where the laws of physics and supply chains break down.
The Mariana Trench of space.
We traced a history of absolute nightmares, the existential torture raids of the Dark Eldar that broke their diplomatic wing, the biological attrition of High Fleet Gorgon,
The time-dilated chaos of the Damocles Crusaders.
the metaphysical terror of a Nurgle plague. We saw how that unrelenting trauma birthed a desperate, dangerous hub of engineering innovation where warriors proudly walk into a radioactive meat grinder in XV9 hazard suits just to buy their families another day.
Trauma-made metal.
We saw that trauma visually manifested in the complete abandonment of ceremonial colors for the pragmatic soot and hazard tape armor of dark gray and yellow.
Form following function.
And finally, we witnessed the ultimate horror. The weaponization of their own utopian ideals, a culture of paranoid survivors holding the line, having learned the hardest, coldest lesson the galaxy has to offer.
They are the bastion. They are unbreakable, but they have been forever changed by the very horrors they are tasked with keeping out.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the grim reality of Lshan. Exploring the mechanics, the psychology, and the sheer brutality of this lore with you is why we do this show.
It's been a great discussion.
But before you go, I want to leave you with the final, lingering question inspired by the sources we've unpacked today.
Oh, this should be good.
Think back to where we started.
Yeah.
That optimistic worldview, that belief in progress and harmony thrown into a meat grinder. If an ideology like the greater good can only survive the realities of the Perdiz Rift by completely mutating, by becoming cold, merciless, and utterly ruthless, was that ideology ever actually good to begin with?
That is a very tough question.
Or is optimism just a fragile luxury, an illusion afforded only to those who haven't yet met the true horrors of the wider galaxy?
Something to carefully consider the next time you decide to look into the abyss.
Until next time.